A top leader, Taliban leader, declaring victory. I'm talking about Mullah Omar over the trade of 5 Taliban fighters. These guys are upper echelon fighters from the Taliban during when they were in government and were in charge. They were exchanged for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Some claiming the U.S. negotiated with terrorists, which we said we wouldn't do. But National Security Advisor Susan Rice on a couple of Sunday shows insisting we didn't. Huh? Peter Doocy live at the White House with new information. Peter.
And Brian, just a few minutes ago, we heard the White House Press Secretary Jay Carney say the Obama administration is overjoyed.
And we're extremely gratified.
Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is no longer in captivity. But we know the terrorists are pretty happy about this, too, because the top 5 Taliban fighters in Guantanamo Bay were freed in exchange for Bergdahl. But Carney is calling their happiness propaganda.
The terrorists are celebrating this, Jay, and in some ways they now know there is a going rate that one American in captivity can win the release of 5 terrorists being held by the United States. Do you worry that that sets a very dangerous precedent?
Well, I'd caution anyone against buying the propaganda of terrorists, first of all. Secondly, it is absolutely a situation with a long history and precedent where we engage in exchange of prisoners during an armed conflict.
The White House is also insisting that dealing 5 dangerous Taliban fighters for the 1 American captured during the Afghanistan conflict does not add up to negotiating with terrorists.
When we are in battles with terrorists and terrorists take an American prisoner, that prisoner still is a U.S. serviceman or woman. We still have a sacred obligation to bring that person back.
We know Bergdahl is safe now. We don't know why he walked off base in the first place prior to his capture in 2009. The Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel says questions about deserting don't need to be answered right away.
Our first priority is assuring his well-being and his health and getting him reunited with his family. Other circumstances that may develop and questions, those will be dealt with later.
Bergdahl still hasn't spoken to his parents in Boise. His dad says he's having a hard time speaking English, and the plan is, as of right now, for Bergdahl to stay in Germany until he is healthy enough to return home. Back to you in New York.
All right, Peter Doocy live in the North Lawn of the White House. Joining us from the chair Peter was sitting in about an hour ago there in the Bureau is Brett Baer. Hey, Brett, how about in that report that Peter just had, Jay Carney talking about, you know, we've negotiated in situations like this with terrorists before. When?
Yeah, good morning. It's interesting to hear the White House talk about this. There is now this effort to say that they negotiated with the country of Qatar and that it was a bank shot to the Taliban. They're saying that this was essentially negotiating with an enemy, a P.O.W. switch, and that they had to do everything to get this U.S. serviceman home. Clearly, there's a lot of happiness in his family. Sure. There's a lot of happiness in his friends, and we shouldn't discount that, bringing him home. But there is a lot of angst on Capitol Hill about this story. Not only the congressional knowledge and consent aspect of it, but also hearing from these various special forces soldiers and commanders who were in the field when Bergdahl left his base. We're going to have one of them on special report tonight at 6.
Right, right. You know, to that note, Steve, you spoke earlier with former commander of the CIA forces there, Gary Bernstein, and he said this when describing the 5 that were released and how dangerous they actually are. Take a listen.
These are the worst jihadists on the planet. These are people that brought Afghanistan back to the 7th century, conducted a genocide against the Hazara, completely stripped all women of all rights in the country. They had no mercy for anyone. This group of men participated in the city of Mazar-e-Sharif. When they seized that city, they killed 6,000 Hazara tribesmen. They took these men and their sons into the street and slit their throats in front of their wives and daughters.
And he would know.
Yeah, I talked to one Special Forces commander who was out there and said, we helped put these guys where they were. So this is exceptionally frustrating that this is happening. The administration says that it's not going to be a threat to the U.S. because they're going to be forced to stay in Qatar. it's just not sitting well on Capitol Hill. And we'll see. This story could last for a while.
Brett, it's just, to me, just my opinion. I watched every Sunday show yesterday. It seemed the Secretary of Defense was befuddled by any type of blowback or any type of controversy with this swap. And Susan Rice seemed unarmed. That's just my opinion. You'll make the call a little bit later. It's like the White House didn't understand there might be some backlash.